Okay, we're going to get started. This room is sponsored by MGO. MGO is the people-friendliest way to experience the world of movies and TV. We help you get what you want to watch on any screen. Just think of us as your entertainment wingman. Okay, I didn't write this, and it's not we. For more information, please visit us at www.mgo.com. Okay. So we're here for the introduction to Drupal with Douglas C. Hoffman. And this sounds like fun. He claims he's going to install Drupal, build a website, and deploy it to the web and have it live and running within the 45 minutes that he has for the session. That is pretty amazing, I think. Okay, so I'm going to give you over to him right now so he can get started. It's a big chance.
Great intro. Actually, I'm not going to do that, though. I already lied. Because I was going to try to cram some other stuff into it. I didn't want to actually build it live. But we'll have a website we'll be playing with during the session, and feel free to ask questions as we go along. Again, my name is Doug Hoffman. I work at Sage Tree Solutions, which is a Drupal shop downtown San Diego. And when I freelance on the side, I do it under the Lakewood Group. So I'm happy to be here. Everybody else happy to be here? Yeah. Long day? How many people were here Friday? Oh, pretty good. I got here like a half hour ago, so I still have fresh legs, I guess. So yeah, we're going to talk about Drupal today. This is an intro to Drupal. We're not going to do anything major in depth. I just want to sort of give you the lay of the land in Drupal and how you approach building Drupal sites and what are all the key things. I got involved with Drupal about 4 years ago. I was at a couple small startups, which unfortunately didn't make me rich, so I was out having lunch with one of the key engineers one day, and he mentioned that the guy that had invested in our companies, who had a big industrial lock company, he sells like the door pushes on the door back there, and he had gone to Taiwan to outsource some hardware of his own so he could sell high-end stuff, low-end stuff, make more money. And he needed to put the documentation somewhere, so he had someone build him a website, and then he asked my friend Matt to make some changes to it. And the website was supposed to handle, I think they had about 100 SKUs, maybe 500 PDF files, not a huge deal. And Matt said, yeah, and I went in and I looked at the website, and it looked like it was built with Drupal. I'm like, what the heck is Drupal? And he sort of explained to me it was this content management system, is a whole new concept of building websites. And then he told me that Marshall had paid $25,000 to have this website built. And I'm like, wow, there's money in this, is what I said to myself. And because in his next breath he said, and if they really knew Drupal, this really shouldn't have taken more than 3 days to build. So you do the math and figure out what the daily rate was on that. So I don't want to go out and rate people that way, but I found it very interesting that there was a sea change in the way websites are built, and that's what the CMSs are all about. Drupal, Joomla, WordPress, and to some extent SharePoint. So that was in November, I think, of that year, and in San Diego there's a Drupal users group, and they put on a conference every year in January. Anybody been to SandCamp? We got a few people, okay. It's a great event. We get about 300, 350 people. It's all Drupal. And we have a great community down in San Diego. The community got so big we split into two groups. We got a North County group and a downtown group. So I went to that camp, got real excited about Drupal, and basically have been working in the world ever since of Drupal. I'm now one of the organizers at SandCamp. So we put on a pretty good show. So next year, if you get a chance, come on down. And as much as I love the technology of Drupal and what it can do in terms of building websites and how it really does change the paradigm, the community of Drupal is even cooler, as I'm sure you guys find out here, at this conference. So that's what's kept me in it more than anything else. It's cool stuff. It's great to build websites, but it's even greater to sort of work in an open source community where everybody's sort of putting in a little bit of their skin to build a community we can all live around and make money at. So I find that really, really wonderful. So what are we going to do today? We are going to go a little bit of a Drupal overview. We're going to talk about what I think of as the three stools in Drupal land: site building, theming, and module development. And I'm going to try and impart to you the basics of Drupal that I went through by beating my head against the wall because I sort of wasn't smart enough to go to a conference and learn that way, and trying to figure it out on my own, especially if you come at it from the perspective of PHP development. You really have to come at it from the perspective of this is how Drupal does things, and I may use PHP as part of that scenario. So the description in the conference agenda, which said I was going to build one live, I decided not to do that. That's the talk I do at all the sand camps. And I thought you guys probably are a little more in depth on things, so I wanted to add some more things in there. So we're going to play with a website I've already built. It's live. It's a little adventure travel site. We have tours. We have guides. We want to have a map, a blog, about us page, a feedback form, and a contact us form. Pretty simple site, but it sort of illustrates the basic concepts of what you want to do when you build a Drupal website. And so what do these three things have in common? Water skiing, mountain biking, and Drupal. The three things for me are I love to do them, and they hurt a lot. When you fall at ski and slalom course at 15, I'm a low-end guy, but at 15 off, the water actually hurts. You can see the mountain bike stuff hurts. Drupal hurts because it's got, people say it has a steep learning curve. That sort of implies that you can sort of get there. It's got a long way down into the ocean learning curve. It has so much depth that it takes a long time to master it. And if you sort of just dive in without some direction, it can be definitely painful. And what I try to do in these things, and I also do some Drupal training down at UC Extension, is in part, here's the right way to approach building a Drupal website. And it's really, really crucial to start with the right approach as opposed to diving in and trying to write code right away. So that's what the deal is. That link down there will take you to a really ugly blank page, but with download. So it's got the presentation on it, and it also has a zip file of the entire website if you want to grab it there and play with it. I'm not going to bore you with a video, but if you download the presentation, use that link and go watch this video. It's a good video that gives you a quick history of Drupal, and I like it a lot. So what is Drupal? Dries, give me the pronunciation, Mariano. Brayhart? Yeah, okay. He's Dutch. Anyways, this is the rock star that started Drupal. He started as a little bulletin board for his friends. My understanding is he called it Dorp, which is a Dutch word for village. But he did a typo when he registered it, as we all want to do, I guess, and it became drop.org. So in 2001, he officially released that as open source and made it Drupal, which is Dutch for drop. So interesting sort of background to how he did this. But this one guy really created this ecosystem of Drupal that has almost 1 million users around the world today, and tens of thousands of developers working on it. So it's really, really cool. I've had the pleasure to meet him a couple times. He came to Quadruple, which is down at Qualcomm about a year ago, and he's just the nicest guy in the world. So in addition, again, just like that community thing, in addition to the technology is really cool, it's being led by a really, really nice guy. So who, what, where, and when is Drupal? I like to actually usually go to the live to Drupal.org, and these were numbers from this morning, so just under 1 million people and over 200 people, 200 countries, almost 200 languages, using Drupal. And what I love it when you watch it live is you see the live commits being made to the code, so it's happening in real time, like 3 or 4, a second. People are out there around the world building this thing, and that is really, really cool to me anyways. I hope it's cool to you. In terms of the enterprise stuff, the big red box is WordPress at the top, but Drupal powers 20% of the top 10,000 websites, and that's a pretty big number, and those are the enterprise class websites that, are very complex, highly secure, yada, yada. So Drupal is at the top of the pack, in that world, in the top 2. Oops. So just a couple examples of some Drupal websites. TheEconomist.com with 20, 30 million page views a month, 3 or 4 million unique visitors, over 3 million registered users in the site. So if you don't think Drupal scales, you look at sites like this and you know immediately what it can do and what it's capable of. FastCompany.com, one of my favorite ones, 15 million a month. Symantec took it for their developers website, huge numbers of page views again. Whether you like Barack or not, whether you like his politics or not, WhiteHouse.org is on Drupal, and the understanding, the stories I've heard about what it took to convince the White House security team that Drupal was an open source project was good enough for the White House is pretty amazing. So it's pretty cool that that's up there. This one isn't anywhere near as sexy, but I like this one even better. I don't know the exact numbers, but our government requires the big departments in government to put out their budgetary information online. And they decided to do that. They all banded together. They spent, I think, around $2 million, something like that, to build a Drupal system to do that, to publish their information. And you would think the government would just stop there. They're done. They've done what they needed to do, and they put it over. But what's really interesting about that one is they gave it back to the open source community. So you can download this stuff from Drupal.org as a distribution and reuse it in any government agency around the world. So that's pretty cool too. That's the link at the bottom that'll take you to it if you want to find it. Anybody here use Joomla or WordPress? It's okay. It's okay. I like them all, actually. I actually there's a good friend of mine who organizes the WordPress camps down in San Diego, and I go to them, and I'm sort of known as the Drupal guy there. So, I got a thick skin. And they're all good. There's nothing wrong with any of them. They're all built on the exact same stuff, right? Linux, a web server, MySQL, PHP, so how much different can they be? Fairly, but I think they each have their own purpose. But my version of where the land is in the big three is Drupal really is the enterprise class application. But it's really not for the faint of heart, because you can build virtually anything. You can build it out. It's got lots of depth. So it takes lots of skill to do a good enterprise class one. And at the lower end, if you're just jumping into it and you want to build a brochure site, WordPress is a lot easier to do. But the difference in my mind is WordPress just doesn't scale as well and doesn't have the same depth. So if you can master Drupal, you're better off starting in Drupal, and then your clients can grow without having to sort of switch platforms. Joomla, been to a couple of Joomla meetups in San Diego recently. Nice people. Their meetups are about 5 people. Drupal's, like I said, we split into 2, and we get about 20 or 30 at each of our meetings. And they also don't seem to have the same control over the code base that Drupal provides. So you're sort of, you can get out on branches where you sort of can't get back. On WordPress, huge numbers, but really built for blogging, smaller sites. I do find it interesting that recently they made an initiative to go after the real estate market. So they're going after verticals. And real estate is more a smaller vertical, but I find that interesting. And my wife works in government, and so you can't get in government without thinking about SharePoint. Everybody thinks that really builds websites. It's pretty ugly, but it's a competitor out there. If you're going into the government space, you're going to run into SharePoint. You're going to have to sort of, it's like a cancer, yes. I don't know that one. Anybody know another one? There's lots of them out there. I run into .NET Nuke, Is I don't think that's Microsoft, so I think that's a private company. Well, yeah, but it came out of Microsoft. Oh, did it? Okay. Oh, yeah, it's built on .NET. Yes, you're right. That way it is. And there's a free version, but then you have to pay once you scale. That's their sort of market. So yeah, there's thousands of them out there. There's a whole conference. I forget the name of the conference. There's a whole conference devoted to content management systems. But really today, these are the big 3. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really think the big 3 are these and content management systems. There's a whole bunch of frameworks which are good if Drupal or whatever you pick doesn't sort of already have pre-built stuff to give you value. Some of the frameworks are good if you want to start from the ground up and build, but in my mind, usually you want to start with 50,000 foot instead of town level. But yeah, there's a lot of them out there, and I'm sure there'll be more. So how to build a Drupal site in 7 easy steps. You want to install Drupal, its modules and libraries that you need. You want to set up your content types, fields, and taxonomy. You want to deal with user roles and permissions. You want to deal with themes, blocks, regions, and menus. You want to do views. We'll talk about that. And then there's a bunch of other stuff you sort of set up, and then you sort of want to theme it. So in my mind, these are sort of the quick steps you want to run through to build a website. And you really want to think through these steps before you start building to figure out what's the data architecture that you really need to use. And that's what's really important in Drupal. It really provides you full control over the data architecture that's going to be in place. We just finished a website for a nonprofit, I guess is what they are, in D.C. And their requirement, we ended up with, I think, 20 content types and a whole bunch of other things in the site. And Drupal was able to easily encompass all of that and tie it all together well. So thinking through the architecture is really the first step you want to make sure you do. So to get Drupal up and running, you want to set up some kind of development environment. You need a SQL database somewhere. You got to download Drupal core and whatever modules you're going to use and themes. get the JavaScript libraries you might be using, like jQuery or CKEditor, things like that. You want to load up all those files, run the installation script, and probably set up a WYSIWYG editor. And when you're done with that, you sort of have WordPress. Although you don't even have WordPress because by default Drupal doesn't turn on blogging. So you have WordPress minus blog. But you basically got a working website. Since we're at scale, I'm going to just skip through this one because everybody pretty much knows what that looks like. The big thing you'll hear in Drupal land is don't hack core. Don't hack core. Thank you. There's an echo in here. And that was the first thing I did when I built my first website after I found out about this $25,000 one. I didn't know I was hacking core, but I did. So at the bottom level, you got Drupal core. You got it has the minimum stuff required sort of to build a website. And the idea is you add contrib modules, which is what you can download from Drupal.org, or you write custom modules. I'm mostly a site builder. I'm sure all of you know more CSS and PHP than I'll ever know. And so my first question in Drupal always is there a module for that? And almost always there is. You can find one, or there's one that gives you 90% of what you want. So the idea with Drupal, too, is it's built, and we'll talk later about it in more depth, but with a hook system. So if you've got a module that does most of what you want to do, there's hooks where you can just extend that module and add what you need, as opposed to rewriting it from scratch. And then the ethos also is to try to give back to the community. So if you extend a module, you want to turn that back to Drupal so other people can use it as well, and that's how we all sort of stay ahead of the game. So we got core, modules, then we have a theme layer, and then we have configuration, site building, and then we get the presentation layer up to the end user. So I'm sure you can't read this very well, but that's basically the file system of the site we're going to play with here. And the key thing to remember is in all of that stuff, there's a sites folder. That's where your stuff goes. It doesn't go anywhere else. It goes in the sites folder. If it goes outside of the sites folder, you've now hacked core. You've changed stuff you probably shouldn't. If you're going to do that, you really need to know you did it and have a good reason to do it. It's not that nobody does it, but you want to remember that. And if at all possible, you want to stay in the sites folder because that's where all your customizations are supposed to go. So unfortunately, when you first open up the installation directory, you see a modules folder and a themes folder, and you go, well, that's where I put my modules and themes, and that's what I did. I just recently cleaned up one of the first sites I built 4 years ago, which had that problem in it. So remember, don't hack core. You want to set up some kind of local development environment. These are the two I use. I'm a Windows guy. Most of the people at SageTree are Mac people, so I get grief about that all the time. But I use both WAMP Server and Acquia Dev Desktop. Acquia Dev Desktop, I don't like it for building new sites because it sets it up as multi-sites. It's like a weird thing that I don't like. But it is perfect and really, really good at importing sites, which is basically what we do most of the time. And it sets up all the vhost stuff. It does all that stuff that I don't have to worry about going around editing, in Notepad, in administration mode, and things like that. So those are the two tools I generally use. And then we got Drupal modules. I'm going to actually jump over to the site. So this is our little demo website, Adventure Travel. Got a nice little slideshow on the front. It's a pretty basic site. But if I go, this is basically what I get when I install Drupal. Most people don't like the standard Drupal admin pages, so they switch it out with a module called admin menu and then some filters. So that's what I have up here at the top. And if I go look at what I like the best, if you want to do it locally, is just go to acquia.com, which is Drace's company, and find the download page and download Acquia Dev Desktop and fire it up, and it'll actually install a Drupal 7 site for you on the fly. You don't even have to download it. Mm-hmm. It all depends on the ports. Yeah, on the settings page, you can change the ports. The first problem I always have with doing training is usually what I do is I use a VPS and we do it all online, so I don't have to deal with this. Because installing, whether it's WAMP Server or Acquia Dev Desktop, there's always port conflicts that screw everything up. Norton Antivirus uses a port that conflicts with WAMP, and a whole bunch of things do. So you got to sort of sit there and play with the port stuff until you get it working, and then it's generally good to go. And then you may have to do some other configuration to up the PHP memory limit, stuff like that. But you sort of do that once, and you get it running, and you're good to go. So let me go back to the website. Please. Yep. Yeah, it's still a little funky. You got to go to the page and copy the URL off Drupal.org, but it does sort of work. The cooler thing that I like about Drupal 7 is it has an auto update feature. So if my modules are out of date, I can go to the update page and have it automatically update everything, run the update script for me, and be done with it. The one thing it doesn't yet do is update Drupal core. So I'm hoping maybe in Drupal 8 we might see that. But there, 7's been out actually about 2 years now. About 2 years. So pretty much everybody's doing their development on Drupal 7 today. There's still Drupal 5 and 6 sites out there. 8 is coming down the path. It's in development. I'm not sure what Acquia would say, but I think it's at least a year away of being a real usable system today. And there'll be big changes in that. They're integrating Symfony and Twig as a templated engine and a bunch of other stuff. So there's going to be some cool stuff, but some changes. So you can install stuff from there. So the first thing that I generally want to do in Drupal is, before I build a website, what's the content going to be for the site? And you have to actually sit down with the client and think through what are the content types you're going to have, because Drupal out of the box comes with 2 content types: a basic page, which is just a page, and an article, which has a heading and a body text. And if you, like I said, if you install Drupal and configure a WYSIWYG editor in there, you sort of have WordPress, and people think, oh, great, I can start making pages and putting all this content in the WYSIWYG editor. And that's the worst thing they could possibly do, because then all that data, pictures, images, text, and stuff, is all glommed together in one big body field. And what Drupal is really good at is fielding stuff. So in Drupal 7, in Drupal 6, content types were all fieldable, and you sort of had to add modules to field other things like users and whatnot. In Drupal 7, everything became what's called an entity, and everything became fieldable. So you really have to sit down and think about what are all the fields that are important for you, so that they can be reused in different ways on different pages and different places. And if you don't do that, you're going to be in a world of hurt when the client says, oh, well, I'd really like this over here instead of over there, because you won't be able to move it because it's tied to the other stuff. So the first thing really to do is go through and think through what are the content types that are going to be implemented on the site. And on our little system here, the only thing we've done is created a tour content type. And in the tour content type, you can see I fielded it out to have a title, a photo, a type of tour, which is going to use a taxonomy reference, the date of the tour, who's the guide, description, and an address field so I can create a map from it. So this is relatively simple, but the idea here is you really need to sit down and think through the content types, because you're probably going to have more than one, and the fields that are going to be used there, and how fields can be used through content types and things like that. It's really, really important that that be step 1 in generating the site. Okay. And then step 2 is to think through, it's an often overlooked, I think, in Drupal thing, taxonomy. Taxonomy is the way you categorize information in Drupal. So it comes by default with one called tags, which is sort of free tagging, which I actually don't find all that useful because people put in auto and car and things like that. You really want to think through strict tagging that you're going to apply to your content. So in our little site here, we're going to have a tour taxonomy, which is called tour type. So to create a taxonomy, I just click Add Taxonomy, I give it a name, I have a taxonomy. But adding the terms into it and making them make sense for the content is what's really, really important. In this case, it's just simple things like backcountry skiing, rafting, surfing, stuff like that. It can be hierarchical as well, so you can have multiple levels to your taxonomies. And again, just like the content types, thinking through the content types in the fields, you want to think through the taxonomy stuff before you start. Yeah. Anytime you see the little arrows here, I can make it hierarchical like that. This one isn't set up to use that much, but that's the deal. So, before I even start, again, it's always sitting down with the client, talking to them about what their content is like, what their business is like, and then trying to determine from that what are the content types and taxonomies I'm going to use on this particular site. Taxonomy. And then third on my list is user roles and permissions. So Drupal has this incredible facility to set up all sorts of user roles and permissions. And it's not limited in any fashion. Typically, you have at least, in terms of roles, It comes with anonymous and authenticated users. You typically add editors. You typically add web admins. And then you may have other ones based on the needs of the site. And Drupal doesn't put any limitations on what you can do. A role itself is really just a name. But then as you add modules into your site, if I go under, they used to be called users, now they're people. If I go into the permissions page in Drupal, you can, so here I have the original 3, administrator comes with it, and I added guide. And then what you can see on the left-hand side are all the things that people might or might not be allowed to do. So I really have to think through who's going to be able to do what and set up the permissions correctly. The other thing that always sort of catches me, but it makes a lot of sense, is when you add a new module to Drupal, you're probably going to get another set of permissions. And by default, Drupal isn't going to give anybody those permissions. So you have to go back, revisit that, and reset the permissions to include the new stuff that you just added. In general, that's the way Drupal works. You add stuff to it. Things show up that you could do, but then you have to let people do them through permissions and through other ways. So user roles and permissions is that third step that you really have to think through. So you got to do content types, the fields, taxonomies, and then user roles and permissions. And then you're sort of at a point where you can start to think about building some stuff. And then after that, you can start to think about theming the site, building out the blocks, the regions, and the menus. I'm just going to jump to the live site. It's easier than doing. Oh, we are on the live site. Here we go. So again, they used to be called themes. Now they're appearance. I wish we would stop changing the names. In this particular site, I've downloaded a bunch of themes. I'm using the Corolla theme at the moment. It's an oldie but goodie, but it's responsive. It's integrated with the color wheel, so you can do all sorts of stuff with it. And this is sort of your administration screen for managing themes in Drupal. And Drupal has sort of a front-end theme for what the public-facing side of the website, and they have admin themes on the backside. And there's 2 reasons to use an admin theme. One is some themes are specifically built for the admin side of things, so they make the admin side easier to use and do than using whatever sort of complex front-end theme you have. And if you're in the middle of theme development, you really want to have an admin theme turned on, because if you break the front-end theme, you can still log into the admin side and do stuff. And that's sort of hidden away down at the bottom of the page here. So right now, the admin theme is set to 7 on this particular site. And then if I look at the settings for this particular theme, it always corrects itself after a second. There we go, just slow. So this particular theme, Corolla, has different layouts. It's responsive. It's got a bunch of stuff. It also is integrated with the color wheel, so I can set colors somewhere. I'm missing them here. The main point I actually was going to make here, so you want to look at your if you're going to use an off-the-shelf theme, you want to look at it to see what it does. Is it responsive? Is that important to you? Does it have the color wheel integrated? Because the client might want to be able to change colors on their own later. And what kind of regions does it support? And one of the gotchas with Drupal themes is different themes have different regions. So you have to sort of, if you want to switch to a different theme, you really got to look at what regions were in use and remap stuff so it goes in the right place. So for instance, if I go over to the blocks page. So in Drupal, the page is laid out into regions, so header, footer, left sidebar, right sidebar, content in the middle. And then I can put things into those regions, typically blocks or the main content of a node. Menus are in blocks as well, so I can sort of move everything around with this block system. And this page shows me the blocks that are available, the ones that aren't used way down at the bottom. The tabs up at the top show me the different themes I have enabled, so I could sort of set up the blocks for that as well. Yeah, that's exactly where I'm going. So it's always a good idea to click that one there. The little yellow boxes show you where all the regions are. So this is a theme with a lot of regions and a lot of options. But remember, if you move to a different theme, it probably will have different regions, and you'll have to think about where all those blocks were and what you're going to do. So I can get out of that guy there. And in the basic block system, which is what we're looking at here, comes with Drupal out of the box. I sort of have all these blocks, and I can place them in different regions. In this case, I'm using the Superfish menu with Corolla, so it's placed in the menu bar. And I can also do things like configure the blocks. And I have some simple things I can do, like only show it on these pages or only show it on every page except those. If you have simple needs, the regular block system works pretty well. There's another module called Context, which most people start using because, for instance, if you wanted to have a block over here on one page and over here on another page, the regular block system doesn't let you do that. And Context allows you to do that. Context allows you to set up rules. Let's say if I'm in these pages or I'm in, this has happened, put this block here or do other things. So if, initial building of sites, great to use the block system, but most people eventually gravitate to the Context module to do more stuff. And then last but not least is Drupal has a whole menu system. So menus are basically lists of links you're going to use. They can be added to automatically as you build things in Drupal. You can make as many menu blocks as you want, place them in different places. Some modules bring in blocks for you, menu blocks. For instance, when I enabled the Superfish module to get the drop-down menus in this particular theme, it gave me 4 Superfish blocks that I can place in different places with menus in them. And so the main one, the main user menu system is called main menu, and if I list the links on this particular site, I can see, the links that are in this menu. I can go place them places. You can see just like we did on the taxonomy tours, has under it maps, and because it's indented, so I can do that kind of drag and drop stuff here as well. I can disable menu items but leave them in place, and do those kinds of things. So there's a whole menuing system also based on blocks, so I get to place them where I want across the site. Oh yeah, so that's the easy stuff. The hard stuff, but the really cool stuff in Drupal is views. If you build a Drupal website and you didn't use views, you're missing something. So what views are, so this is, actually let me just go back to the site. Views are lists of things at the end of the day. That's what a view is. So if I go to the home page here of our little website, that slideshow, it's a view because it's a list of things, right? If I go to my guides page, get this nice grid display of guides. It's a, thank you. You guys are good late in the day. Yes, please. You can have pictures can certainly be made links, yeah. Yep. If I go to the tours page, it's a view, right? You got it. So anytime you're going to put up a list of things, you have to think views. And what views really are, in my mind, as a site builder who doesn't like to write any code, it's an interface to MySQL, and I don't have to write select statements, right? It does it for me. So let's look at a couple of them. So we got the slideshow on the home page. So under structure, under views, which is a module I've added, if I go look at the home page, slideshow view, we can see it's formatted slideshow. So I added another module called View Slideshow to make that available in views, which the first time I ever did that way back when 4 years ago, it took me I knew I had installed the module, it took me forever to figure out how I created the slideshow until I realized it was a list of things, so it had to be a view. And there it was for me. So I basically set up the format, and on the left side there I have, the fields I want to use, so I'm just doing the photo and the title, what filters, the only published tours, and only tours. And it's only going to show, it's going to show tours by start date, so that's not too interesting there. There's a whole bunch of advanced stuff I can do over here, arguments and whatnot. I'm not going to really touch those. It also gives you a cool preview right at the bottom of the view, so as I'm in the middle of making this view, I can sort of see what's happening. And if I turn it on in the settings for views, I can see the ugly select stuff that Drupal is doing for me that I don't have to worry about, along with some performance data. So if you got a big site and you're worried about performance, this is the place to come to look to see what's happening in the site, at least initially. There's all sorts of other things you can do, but this is the place to start. So that's a view for a slideshow. If I go look at the view for it's a really small font here. Guides. Similar stuff, but it's set up to be a grid display using the picture and the first name of the person, and there it is. Views can also have tours. Actually, I'm going to go to maps. Just third example is good enough. So Drupal has a great module called Open Layers for doing mapping stuff. So if I want to display a picture of the world with where all my tours are happening, that's a view, because it's a list of stuff. It just happens to be on a map. It's a little harder to set this up. There's a little more, sort of configuration stuff, but, really, and I think there's a link in my slides somewhere to a YouTube video I did on doing a map view. Then I create a list of the tours which have an address associated with them, and I'm using a module called geocoder, which basically takes the address and turns it into a lat long. That's the cool thing about maps. They're literally just two numbers, two integers that can place me anywhere on the world. And then I make a list of those. So if I look at, this is it's called an overlay. I don't have that on there. But anyway, there it is. So you can see these lat longitudes being generated by the geocoder module, putting into views, and then having done that, I just go over here and the home page, and I hit it under tours because I had that indented on my menu, and there's a map with little red dots of all the stuff that's there. 10 minutes, literally. Really cool. Once you know the right modules to use and you watch a video or two, it's really, really easy to do. And so, views more than anything else in my mind is what makes Drupal. Yeah. It assumes, so I went through, in my content type, I said we're going to use mapping. So I included an address field in my content type. So that's another module I used, was the address field module. And so, yeah, my content does have addressed information in it. Yeah. It's just taken an address, and geocoder turns that into the lat long pair. So I didn't have to do any of that work. All I had to do was type in the addresses.
Unless you're writing your own modules, we don't have to write any database. By turning on the module, Google will add it on its own.
Mm-hmm.
You only need one like SQL database.
Correct. Yep.
You can extract into the Google database very easily. That's another power point of Drupal.
Right. That's the depth of Drupal, as I call it. It's like, out of the box I can do this, assuming I'm willing to, sort of have an Excel spreadsheet and type in the addresses into my data. But I can use web services and talk to other databases to get stuff. In this case, it's the open layers. It's open layers. Yeah. It supports like virtually all the maps. There's a list that's more than a screen long with Google Maps. I don't even know all the maps, but they're all in there.
It's like a mapping framework API.
Right.
You can work with any other APIs out there.
Right.
Very, very powerful.
And and just as quickly as I got the tours up there, I could have said I want to list something else like or maybe I want to list red tours as my diving tours and green tours as my other tours. I just create another layer, and I can put multiple layers and have different icons showing up, a little guy swimming, a little guy riding, and things like that. And it's just by adding another layer in that view, and it's really, really easy is the key that I want you to walk away with. So views are king. So those are the views. We just walked through those. Then in terms of other interesting stuff, one of the other powers of Drupal that often gets sort of missed or overlooked is its image styles. And if you've ever dealt with somebody who puts the 10 megabyte, big picture up on the website and makes the page take forever to load, Drupal solves that problem without you having to open up Photoshop or yell at the guy or do anything bad. It basically lets you set up image styles to be used in different areas from the same original picture. So the original picture is still there, and it will resize the pictures and make them web happy for you automatically, and only do it on the fly as needed. And that one person who asks for it the first time is the person that pays the price of the conversion. After that, they're cached, and they keep coming up. And if I want to go in and change my image styles, like maybe I don't like, let's see, let's actually do this. So this is the image styles. Yeah. Yeah. I'm just going to do a really simple thing. So right now we have a slideshow image style. It's cropped to 7 by 350. So let's up that to 400. Oops, 400 would be better. Update that, go back to the home. Oh, I didn't save it. I might have messed up there. But anyways, having done that, now when the slideshow shows, it's going to sort of, okay, I got to redo all the images, but I'm going to do it once, and now they're going to be a different size. I didn't have to go into Photoshop. Did I mention I didn't have to go into Photoshop? Yeah, it's cool stuff. Yes, it keeps the original files. It never. Yeah, but then it keeps the resized image that it's made. Yes, right. So yes, yeah. It always starts with the source and gives you whatever image style was required in this place, and that means across the site on in the sidebar where I'm showing my little upcoming tours, it's a little small guy, and the slideshow it's big. And so I just set up different image styles based on what I want to show in different places. And again, I didn't open up an IDE to do anything here. I just configured Drupal to do this stuff. Yeah, you have to decide scaling, cropping, and what's going to happen. Yeah, and if you do weird stuff, and the guy's head is down here, and it's crops it over here, that stuff's going to happen. Yeah, but within reason, it's automated, and it's great to do custom stuff for small sites. But when you're talking about thousands and tens of thousands of images, you can't really afford to do that, and that's why this stuff is really cool. So I can probably got to pick up the pace a little here. So other cool modules, Path Auto, which gives you control over URL structure, which is really important for lots of reasons, SEO and inside views and things like that. Basically, you can say for your different content types what the URL structure is going to look like, and you can stick in tokens and things like that, and get that stuff going. Yeah. Mm-hmm. The file is stored in the file system, but when Google runs through your site, it gets all the text.
No, actually what's happening is that it's generating, the Drupal engine is generating HTML.
Yeah.
It's like only on your HTML pages. So
Google doesn't know that it came from Drupal per se.
if it's a view, it doesn't know it's a view. It's going to look at content.
If you do view source on any Drupal page, you're just going to see the HTML stuff. Yes. Yeah, so, but what Google ends up seeing is HTML. It doesn't really see that it came out of a database. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, okay. Because I know we're running towards the end of the hour. I'm going to run through real quick because this was the stuff I wanted to try to get to by not building it live. Talking about theming, there's basically a bunch of different kinds of themes. There's, sort of complete themes. You sort of install them like Corolla, and you got to sort of theme out of the box. There's starter themes, so if you're building up a custom one, so typically you want to use one of the starter themes like Fusion, Zen, or Omega are the big three in my mind. And then there's admin themes that we talked about earlier. If you look at a theme, it's basically made up of CSS, images, JavaScript, and template files. Technically, you basically have a folder in the site system that has an info file which defines the theme and the regions that are being the theme and calls out the CSS and things like that. And then we're, in general, using the PHP template engine, which is basically using template files to generate the HTML that Google would then see. If you want to look inside a theme, you find these TPL PHP files. And if you look at the image on the right, it sort of shows you the template files that are used for different parts of the page. So the HTML one, the page one, regions. Each region has one. Nodes have them, blocks have them, and comments have them. So these files, these template files, if you look at them, they're basically mostly simple PHP if statements that print then a variable. So Drupal keeps all these variables with all the HTML for your different regions and your blocks and your things like that. And in the template files, you're basically just printing them out unless you need to go deeper, and there are ways to do that, but beyond this one. All themes in Drupal can have a parent, so you can take any theme and create a child of it and just make changes to that. So if you're changing a contributor theme, it's better to make it a child so that when an update comes out, you don't lose all your changes. So that's theming, the fastest version of theming I've ever done. Then on the side of module development, Drupal has a great hook system. Basically, Drupal is sitting there all the time going, hey, I'm about to do this. Do you want to do something for me? And you can tie into it through the hook system by writing your own code that would tie into the appropriate hook. And you create modules with an info file, just like the themes. It sets up the file, and a module file, and maybe an install file. If you want to get a quick intro to Drupal module development, Ezra's talk that he gives around the country, he was at Sandcamp and did it. It's a great talk. It's just about an hour. I would highly recommend it. You want to look at api.drupal.org to look at the API, and there's a great field reference for all the fields that you can use on forms in Drupal. That's what an info file looks like. Basically give it a name, tell it what version of Drupal you can work with, and where to put it. This is a simple module that basically implements a couple hooks. So hook block info is one that's going to create a block and tell Drupal what the name of it is. And what you'll notice is we replace the word hook with the name of the module. So in this case, it was called sample module. And then it's implementing a second hook, hook block view, which basically is when the block is going to be displayed, that's what's going to be run. And it's calling a function to basically put a hello world message in it. So that's a simple example of how you would write a module in Drupal to create a block for the site. And I think if I go over here, in modules, I think that's installed here. Let's just turn it on and see what happens.
Another quick note, if you're a heavy developer and you love the Clang, like a lot of us do, recently built a Clang system called Drush that allows you to turn off modules.
Yeah, if you don't like using the mouse, Drush gets you there really fast. If you're using Git, which everybody on Drupal generally is, you want to use Drush for all this kind of stuff as well. Drush, yeah. Drush and Drush Make, which lets you build make files to build websites, which is pretty cool as well.
Yeah, one command you can spin up a bunch of sites.
Yeah.
Tear it down.
Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to enable that sample block guy. And this site also has the coder module installed, so there's a way to sort of have a automatic look at your code to see if it passes. And I think I ran this earlier, and that one in particular passed. So now having enabled that, I should over here in the blocks see a new block that I can put on the site. There's the sample block that created by that module. Let's put it in sidebar second. I've been up there a few times, yeah. We always go to their camp in August, although they're having another one in May, I hear. So now if I go to the home page, I should see that guy in my right sidebar. Mess things up, but there it is. So there's that block that just got automatically created. again, I'm not trying to educate you on module development here, but it gives you a sense of what it takes to do it. It's the hook system that's really important in Drupal. There's another cool module called features. I created my views earlier. I can turn that into a feature, which basically takes my view, which is configuration I did in the UI, and turns it into a module that then sort of is locked in stone. And so if I go change that view, which I can do, which would change it, it would tell me that the feature has been overridden, and I can get it to revert back. It's really good for when you turn sites over to clients and you're afraid they might go in there and muck with stuff. You want to use features to sort of lock things in place so that they can't say, oh, I didn't touch anything. You can't say that. There's another module called the examples module. It's got all sorts of examples of using the hook system. It's a great place to go to learn. One other big thing about Drupal is there's all sorts of distributions out there. So if you're looking for a solution out of the box, like maybe you don't want to pay for Basecamp, Open Atrium is sort of a Basecamp-like thing. You can use that. Acquia has Acquia Commons. There's ones for the educational market, the publishing market, nonprofits and whatnot, which are out of the box. It's a full Drupal install, database configuration all done for you. So you're starting with a whole bunch of stuff built for you. Those are pretty cool. I particularly like these two online resources, DrupalIce.me and buildablemodule.com, which are video services, $35 a month. They're great training videos if you want to dive deep into Drupal to place. And these are sort of the Bible books that I use as well. If you like Drupal, get involved. Get involved with the community. Go to the Drupal users groups. There's definitely ones in your communities. I just became a Drupal Association member, which means I gave $30 to sort of keep Drupal going. It's a great thing. And go to our camps. There's the big DrupalCon is in Portland in May, and there's one in Phoenix actually in 2 weeks. So if you're really interested in Phoenix, I'll be out there. Anyways, thanks. Enjoy Scale. I think I got like 2 minutes. If anybody wants to come up afterwards, I'd be happy to answer questions.